Hello everyone and welcome back to Fun Food and Games. I'm your host. Let's get started. Today we're going to be going through the first of a three-part series. We're going to start with Burn. We're going to be doing Legacy today. We're going to show you what we're running, talk about some of the cards that also come in handy in Modern and Pauper, and in the future we're going to visit those decks. But for today we're going to start with Legacy. Let you know it's really not impossible to get into the Legacy format. You just have to be willing to start on the bottom rung, and the bottom rung is Burn. So we're going to get started here with 18 land, and from the land we're going to move on to the main board and then to the sideboard. So of course we got to be running mountains. We need 16 of them. 16 is what I said. Yes, 16. I know I said at the beginning we had 18 lands, and 2 of those lands are the Biblioplex. The Biblioplex, it will give you a colorless mana. It comes in untapped. Very important. All lands need to be untapped when they enter the battlefield. But this one will let you tap 2 mana and itself to look at the top card of your library. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. Activate only if you have exactly 0 or 7 cards in the hand. Well, in Burn, you're going to be running through your hand pretty fast. So by having these options available will help you out quite a bit. When you can empty your hand on turn 2, sometimes being able to turn 3 Biblioplex and put an extra card into your hand for turn 4, helping take out creatures, will make all the difference. Speaking of creatures, we're going to start running into those guys. First one up is 4 copies of Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil for 1 red will give you a 4/3 devil creature, and whenever Vexing Devil enters the battlefield, any opponent may have it deal 4 damage to him or her. If the player does, sacrifice Vexing Devil. Some people say that having a built-in removal on your card is bad. In this case, it's not. It's a lightning bolt +1. And the bolt is the standard bearer of how much damage everything should be judged by. So if you can do 4 points of damage for 1 red mana, this beats the lightning bolt. Excuse me. So, next up, 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear. Monastery Swiftspear, for 1 red, you're going to get a human monk creature with haste and prowess. It starts as a 1/2, but whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. We've got a lot of instants and a lot of sorceries in our deck, so we can usually pump Monastery Swiftspear up pretty fast. We're also running 4 copies of Goblin Guide. Goblin Guide is a 2/2 Goblin Scout with haste. And whenever Goblin Guide attacks, if any player reveals the top card of his or her library. If it's a land card, that player puts it into his or her hand. I know a lot of people are changing out Goblin Guide for Ragavan. It's not a bad option. There's lots of different ways to go. Ragavan happens to be $100 a card, and we're kind of trying to stick into a budget with our Burn decks. That's the whole point of Burn, in my opinion, is you're trying to stick to a budget. You got basic lands, you're not doing anything funny with your mana base, so hopefully the deck should be kind of cheap. Once you start having $100 cards in Burn, your deck suddenly skyrockets in price, so I'm keeping the Goblin Guide. And finally, as our creatures go, we're running 2 copies of the Grim Lavamancer. 1 red, and my camera's wanting to play crazy on me again. For 1 red, we get a human wizard with a 1/1 that for a red and tap it, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, and Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to target creature or player. We're going to have instants and sorceries built up into our graveyard pretty fast. Being able to exile them to do a couple extra points of damage is not a bad deal. Speaking of those sorceries that we're going to be having built up in our graveyard, we've got 4 copies of Riftbolt. Riftbolt is a sorcery. There it goes. For 2 colorless and a red, Riftbolt deals 3 damage to any target. I know we talked about the standard bearer of Bolt a moment ago. Riftbolt holds up just barely. You can suspend it for 1 turn for 1 red mana, and at the next upkeep, you can have it deal that 3 damage. It's not exactly Bolt, but it has benefits. Lava Spike has to go only to the face, where this can go anywhere. It's a hard call. It really is. I prefer to go Riftbolt over Lava Spike myself, though. And then the standard bearer we were talking about, Lightning Bolt. For 1 red, Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Nothing needs to really be said about this. It's been the all-star for red since day 1. Thank you, Christopher Rush, for, always giving us great artwork. I wish I still had my Christopher Rush Lightning Bolts, but these will do. Next, we have Pyrostatic Pillar. Pyrostatic Pillar, we're going to have an enchantment. For 1 colorless and a red, whenever a player plays a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, Pyrostatic Pillar deals 2 damage to that player. So this is basically an Eidolon as an enchantment. It makes it much more harder for people to remove. It tends to stick around a little bit longer. Keeping 4 of these in the main board, in my play groups, in my LGSs, seems to really work out for me. Speaking of working out in Legacy, Price of Progress. Price of Progress is an instant for a colorless and a red that deals damage to each player equal to twice the number of non-basic lands that player controls. Well, we've got 2 copies of the Biblioplex in our deck. So the most it's ever going to do damage to us is 4 points of damage. But to our opponent, well, that's a different story. It can do anywhere from 2 to 10 very easily. Price of Progress in Legacy is a staple that you need to have in your burn deck. And it's not common. It's very easy to pick up. Speaking of picking up, Fireblast. Fireblast. Focus. Focus. It wants to play every once in a while. I know you want to see me. You can see me now. Fireblast. For 4 and 2 red, you get an instant, and you may sacrifice 2 mountains instead of paying Fireblast casting cost. Fireblast deals 4 damage to target creature or player. Last ditch effort, you've spent your last mana, you need to do the last 4 points of damage. You sack your 2 mountains, you win the game. Fireblast is also great to have because it goes into your pauper decks. It slots right into it. It's a common from Visions. It's way overpowered for a common, but when we come to the pauper decks, we'll see what I'm talking about, how this slots right in. All right, we're also running 2 copies of Skewer the Critics. I don't know why I gave you 2 cards there. Should take 1 away. We're going to make you focus again. Focus. There we go. For 2 colorless and a red, you'll get a sorcery that has the ability to Spectacle. Spectacle will allow you to cast it for 1 red, and you can do that if an opponent lost life this turn. And Skewer the Critic deals 3 damage to any target. So it's, again, a conditional lightning bolt, and it is a sorcery speed, but it really doesn't matter with how you're wanting to pump your Monastery Swiftspear and just get the damage going as fast as you can. And I'm sorry about my nails. I was working on my bike earlier tonight. I guess I should have washed my hands a little bit better, but that is why we put sleeves on our cards. And now I'm hitting the camera, so I need to just relax. Wow. Okay. Taking it easy there. So next up, Exquisite Firecraft. Exquisite Firecraft, for 1 colorless and 2 red, you get a sorcery that deals 4 damage to any target. And you also have Spell Mastery. If there are 2 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, this spell can't be countered. Unable to counter your burn spell. That's really all that needs to be said. And finally, 4 copies of Light Up the Stage. For 2 colorless and a red, you have a sorcery that also has the ability to spectacle. So if your opponent lost life this turn, you can cast it for 1 red. Exile the top 2 cards of your library, and until end of turn, you may play those cards. Again, as I said with the Biblioplex, you're running out of cards very quickly in your deck. Well, not in your deck, in your hand, rather. So being able to grab a couple extra more cards for 1 red mana is a deal. That concludes the main board of the deck. Now we're going to jump over to the sideboard. Now, first up, we have 2 copies of Smash to Smithereens. Smash to Smithereens is 1 colorless and a red for an instant to destroy a target artifact. Smash to Smithereens deals 3 damage to that artifact's controller. It's, a lightning bolt plus destroy artifact. It's not bad for the mana and the abilities that it does. Alright, we're also running 4 copies of Volcanic Fallout, which for 1 colorless and 2 red, you have an instant. Volcanic Fallout cannot be countered, and it deals 2 damage to each creature and each player. Bye-bye elves. Bye-bye merfolk. We do not want to play with you. We want you to go bye-bye. Speaking of blue go bye-bye, we're running the red Elemental Blast. Focus in. For 1 red, you have an interrupt. Interrupt what? No, it's been eroded. It's an instant. But counter target blue or destroy target blue permanent. So running 3 of these in the sideboard, you can't beat it when you're up against a blue deck. 1 red mana, that's all you need. Although be prepared, they're going to come at you with like a Hydro Blast or a blue Elemental Blast. And depending on your LGS, if you're running into a lot of blue decks, you can play the Pyroblast, which is a little more expensive than the red Elemental Blast. But, and again, I'm running 3 in my sideboard. You can run 4 if you're running into a lot of control decks. Speaking of control, we got the Gorilla Shaman. He's going to control all of the artifacts. For 1 red, you get an Ape Shaman. He's a 1/1. And for XX1, you can destroy target non-creature artifact with mana value X. Now that seems kind of steep. However, it's Legacy. And Legacy, the gorillas want to eat all the moxes. So for 1 mana, you can destroy a mox. No problem. That's all day. Any day. All day. We're also running 2 copies of Leyline of Combustion. And Leyline of Combustion is for 2 colorless and 2 red. You have an enchantment, and if Leyline of Combustion is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. And whenever you and or at least 1 permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Leyline of Combustion deals 2 damage to that player. So your hand disruption decks, all those type of things, anything that, it's just going to target your spells, your creatures, not your spells, but yeah, your creatures. Leyline of Combustion is going to make them pay for that. And to cap it all off, we're running 2 more copies of Exquisite Firecraft. For 1 colorless and 2 red, it's a sorcery, dealing 4 damage to any target, and if you have spell mastery, the spell can't be countered. Well, that concludes our deck tech on Legacy Burn. We're going to have the whole copy of the deck list posted down below this video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them down below. As always, give a like, share to a friend, and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Let me know if there's something you want to see. Next up, we're probably going to be bringing you Modern Burn, and from there on, we're going to go on to Pauper Burn. And like I said, hopefully I'm going to start getting some more food and other things into the content. I know I was talking about my bike tonight, and we might even start bringing up some of the mountain bikes on the channel and all that. Let people check those out and see what they think. Let me know where they go mountain biking at. And as always, have a good one. We'll see you next time.